Hello, everyone. We are going to be talking about applications and using systems of equations in two variables. And yes, what this means is that you'll be given a word problem and you have to write a system of equations. So let's talk about this. Given a system of equations, as such, we have equation 1 and equation 2, and we have our variables as indicated by x and y, x in red, y in blue. So basically what this is two equations with two variables, x and y. Variables being unknown. I do not know what x is and I do not know what y is. And the premise behind this is that those variables represent a value that you need to find, that you need to solve for. And really, within your system of equation, what you're doing, it's almost like you're comparing equation 1 and equation 2 to one another to be able to solve for those variables. So for your application problems, what you're going to have to do is write your own system of equation from the information that they give. And some of these problems can consist of 3 or 4 sentences. So you need to be able to glean from it and get rid of all the extra material and take what you need. So steps for solving. The first thing is to identify your variables. What is x going to represent and what is y going to represent? After identifying what x is going to represent and y is going to represent, you need to identify the remaining key information. And generally there are going to be 2 things in that problem that are of note. And it's 2, equation 1 and equation 2. Equation 1 is going to represent something within itself, and equation 2 is going to represent something within itself. And they'll be related, but they're going to have like their own purpose. And these items can be, and this is a limited list, but just to give you an understanding, like cost, money, profit. So money and quantity. And then we have distance and time. And then we have money or cost or profit, money and time. Or like length and width. You'll see that problem dealing with a rectangle. Area equals length times width. Well, once you identify what your x value and your y value represents, and then you identify the 2 general categories that you're dealing with within your problem, make a table. Make a table to help simplify your work. You get rid of all the extraneous information, and in that table you just have your variables and you have your values representing the 2 key pieces of information. And from that you write the system and then you solve the system. So that being said, let's take a look at a practice problem and see what we can do. Now if you would like, by all means pause the video and using the steps I gave, see if you can solve it, and then at the end we'll compare answers. Okay, so the first thing to do is read the problem. Elementary school is having a fundraiser. They are selling apples and oranges. Well, I bet you that's key, apples and oranges. After the fundraiser is over, they find that they made, okay, so they got a profit. So I got some money here. But they did not keep track of how many apples or oranges they sold. They do know they sold 5 times as many oranges, and they know the apples were $25 and oranges were $30. How many of each were sold? So overall what I'm trying to do is find a quantity. So let's see here. We've got apples and oranges again. 5 times as many oranges. And I know apples were $25 and oranges were $30. So going through there, I know that what I'm going to have is something like this. I know I'm comparing apples and oranges. And what I'm dealing with here, I have, and I'll write this over to the side, I'm wanting quantity. Okay, that's the thing that it's asking me for. So I know I'm wanting quantity. I know that's what my variables are going to represent because that's what they're asking me for. And I know price, right? 25 and 30. And then I know the overall profit. So let me get my information, because to me, this is just a lot of writing. It makes everything busy. So I want to simplify everything. So I'll do price. Apples were $25. Oranges were 30. And then let's see, quantity. Well, we'll make apples be X and oranges Y, because that's what I'm trying to find. What's the how many of each were sold? So that's my X and that's my Y. If you had apples to be X, that's fine, and oranges to be Y. That's fine. And then my profit. Well, my profit is simply for apples. What was my profit for apples? Well, if each bag of apples cost $25, it would be times how many bags of apples I sold. So 25x and 30y. So let's set up our system of equation. Whenever I look at my information here, my first system of equation can simply be 25x plus 30y equals $1,400. This equation 1 more or less deals with my total profit. So think about this. I know that my final count, my final sum for profit at the end of the fundraiser was $1,400. So I can go through here and I can turn around and say, well, that is simply how many bags of apples I sold times 25 plus how many bags of oranges I sold times 30. That'll give me 1,400. So that's my first equation. My second equation, I got to have a comparison between the two. And what this says is that they sold 5 times as many oranges. So oranges is Y. So Y will equal what? 5 times as many apples. Very good. And that's going to be equation 2. And I have set up my system of equations. Now this looks a little weird, so let's simply rewrite it. I have 25x plus 30y equals 1,400. In this, I can just take this and say 5x minus y equals 0. Same equation, I've just rewritten it. I'm using elimination. I could have simply used substitution and plugged in and solved, whichever way you choose to do it. So let us solve for this. So I have 25x plus 30y equals 1,400, and then I'm going to multiply through by 30. And then I add them together. So I have, let's see, 175x equals 1,400. And then I need to divide. I can't do that one in my head. 1,400 divided by 175. 8. So x equals 8. So what's that telling me? I sold 8 bags of apples. Now what I do is simply plug back in. I'll use equation 2. I'll say y equals 5 times 8, which equals 40. So right here I sold my quantities. I sold 8 bags of apples and 40 bags of oranges for the fundraiser. With these problems, most people have difficulty in the beginning in solving them. What it takes is practice in looking at examples to train your brain to get rid of just the ignorance of this type of problem. So please be patient. Make sure that you set up a table. It does help. And then look at the information that they've given you. It's not a definitive answer that I can turn around and say, oh, each time it is this, because you're going to have different types of questions. But again, set up that table, identify your variables, and identify the two main items that they're giving you. In this case, they were talking about money and quantity, and then make a comparison between the two. Each equation is going to represent something of its own that are related. And then once you have that, then solve. Okay, guys, good luck on working your problems dealing with applications for systems of equations and two variables.